New Year's Eve is supposed to sound like laughter, but in 1944, it sounded like a siren, long, hungry, and impossible to ignore. I was 12, and I remember thinking something childish and honest. If the year is ending, why won't the war end with it? Outside, the streetlights were dimmed for blackout. Inside, my mother kept our coats on as if warmth itself was a luxury we couldn't afford. We had no tree, no gifts, no feast. Just one candle on the table and a piece of bread my mother had saved like it was gold. She told me not to complain because other families had less, and because complaining didn't change the sky. My father wasn't with us that winter. He was somewhere, which is what adults say when the truth is too sharp to hold. On the table was a worn New Year postcard someone had given us before the war turned paper into treasure. The words Happy New Year looked almost insulting now, like a joke told in a hospital. Still, my mother wrote a date on the back with a shaking pencil, as if writing it down could make it real. I watched the pencil move and wondered if we would be alive to read it next year. When the sirens rose again, we went down to the basement with the others. The shelter smelled of damp stone, wet wool, and fear. People tried to hide behind polite faces. Children slept on coats. Old men sat with their hands folded like they were praying without words. Someone brought a radio, turned low enough that the announcer sounded like a ghost. A cracked wall clock hung above us. At 11:58 p.m., people began to stare at it, as if the clock could negotiate with the bombs. I didn't understand why anyone cared about midnight. Midnight didn't bring food or safety or father's home, but I saw something in the adults' eyes. The need to believe. Time still meant something. Above us, the city groaned. Distant explosions rolled through the ground like thunder trapped under stone. Searchlights swept the clouds. And every time the ceiling trembled, dust drifted down like gray snow. I imagined the new year arriving in the sky, stepping into smoke, taking one look at the fire, and turning around. Then, quietly, someone whispered, Happy New Year. Not loud, not cheerful, more like a secret. A woman broke a tiny piece of candy into 4 parts and handed them out like communion. For a moment, people smiled, not because they were happy, but because they remembered how happiness used to feel. Near the entrance stood a guard, one of the occupiers or a local policeman, I never knew which. He looked as cold as we were. His shoulders were dusted with snow. He didn't shout. He didn't move much at all. He just watched the crowd the way tired men watch a fire, not with power, but with resignation. At 12:03, the closest blast hit. The shelter jolted. The lamp swung. Someone screamed. Mothers pulled children under their coats, turning their own bodies into shields. I remember my mother's hand on the back of my head, pressing me down, and I realized this was her New Year's wish. Not joy, not peace, just one more morning. Morning arrived with a silence that felt wrong. When we climbed the stairs, the street looked older than it had the night before. A building's front wall was missing, like a dollhouse cut open to show private lives. People walked slowly, not searching for fireworks, but for names, faces, and proof that their homes still existed. In the snow near a pile of bricks, I saw a small mitten, child-sized, dark against the white. It shouldn't have been there. It didn't belong to the rubble. I stared at it too long because objects like that make tragedy personal. Wars are counted in numbers. Loss is counted in things a child might drop while running. Many years later, I still think of that New Year. Not because it was the worst night, there were worse, but because it taught me something I never forgot. People don't celebrate the New Year in wartime to pretend everything is fine. They do it to prove they are still human, to say softly, stubbornly, "You can bomb our streets, but you cannot bomb time itself. We are still here. We are still counting."